Welcome to Honestly Rated, and today we'll be talking about your favorite type of detergent, Tidepool. Tidepool. Tidepool is one of the last Imaginators released for Skylanders Imaginators, and isn't highly talked about because of it. Maybe even people don't even know, like how I did. I didn't even know this Skylander existed. But today we're going to be taking our time to take a look over the moves and overall idea of the Skylander to figure out if they really did put in the work and time to make her a very viable character, or someone that maybe should have just been forgotten and not remembered. First thing I want to go over for Tidepool is actually her lore. So, Tidepool, it's a pretty simple story. She is a undercover spy that worked with an evil organization that she didn't know of, and eventually when she did figure it out, she decided to leave them and go out on her own justice spree of trying to find all these shadow organizations that were trying to take down Skylands and, you know, kill them, basically. And Eon, obviously, I guess got such a good keen eye, noticed her and was like, hey, you should join us. But this is where it takes a little bit of a turn, where Tidepool doesn't immediately want to join them just because of how she felt before with the other organization. So they all took a little test to see how truthful they were being, and they were all good, except for Flynn, because he said he was 50% Mabu and 50% enchilada hot sauce. So, good job, Flynn. Yeah, you almost made Tidepool not become a Skylander. But, again, we'll see if that was for the good or better. Before we go on to the moveset, there's one thing I would like to ask you, and that is if you want to see your Skylander on Honestly Rated next, there is one simple thing you gotta do, and that is going into the comments, and then typing in a Skylander you want to see. It's very simple, very nice, helps me know which ones you want to see next, and if it's a unanimous vote, or I see a mix of scatter shots, you have the potential of being next. So, thank you. It will help me in the long run. And if you don't know which ones I've already done, there's one other simple solution to that, and that's just going to the playlist on my channel to check out which ones I have done. So, without further ado, let's see if Tidepool's moveset can make a splat, or it's just going to fall flat. Starting us off, we are instantly going into a splat with Squid Pistols and Squid Toss. These two, I think, personally work pretty well together. They're both two ranged weapons. One works as just a standard primary, and the other working as more of a trap. Pistols is our primary. It's a simple squid shot that at the end does a nice little spin that personally I really like. The spin adds a lot, especially when it comes to bigger hordes of enemies if they're coming at you at different angles. It's very nice just to kind of splatter them up. I also just like the quick little detail of just like the quick like black of the ink splattering onto an enemy, and it does that with other things too, and I find that pretty cool. The other thing is our little squid friend that lives in the ground. He likes tickling people in their butt cheeks, and he does it pretty well. You can have two out at a time, and if they're close enough, he'll just start fingering them all until they die. And it's doing, obviously, solid damage, but they're senseis, they're obviously going to do a lot of damage, so damage really doesn't really matter in this situation. But, other than that, these two work out pretty well together, and we're actually going to get our next move right after that's going to add on to this combo pretty well. And that move's called Whale Tail. We get a whale friend, and I swear to God, this looks like the one from Trap Team. I might be just hallucinating, and maybe it's even like a different thing too, because I swear to God, I've seen this the same whale at some different point too. You guys can let me know. You probably know a lot more of the lore than I do, but the whale tail is pretty cool. It's a simple push that doesn't do a lot of damage outright. It does like 3, and it does it like chipping wise, kind of something like Robo would do. But the nice thing about it is that it's a pushback, and the reason that this works so well is that, well, Tidepool maybe isn't the slowest character, but she is a lot more moderately not quick on her feet. You know, she got a lot of barnacles down there. I would highly suggest that they're probably heavy, and she does little tiny stippy steps every single time she walks. And having something like a whale, especially when it comes to a faster enemy, just being able to push him back is just simply nice, so you can just keep fucking firing at them and not have to worry if you're going to have your little spinny blue blob actually hit them or not. I like that. And another way you can use it too with the squid itself is by pushing enemies next to the squid so they can get fingered up their butthole. But other than that, it can also just literally push enemies off the map, and that is something that I like endearly. So yeah, it really fits into the combo. It really helps her out in general. And these 3 starting moves are, you know, this is a nice way. A nice path has been set, yet, you know, in the future, maybe they don't do it too well. We'll see, but I'm really liking the start in here. This is a very nice start. Next up is another, honestly, kind of vital tool set for Tidepool, and that is the spin shot. The spin shot is a utilization of the jump shot, and this is a move that I would like to kind of show Robo a little something, because Robo also had an upgrade in his primary path that allowed him to have a different altering move in the air. And they both basically work in the same way, except Tidepool does it a little bit better. And the reason being is that Tidepool can switch between the two just by whatever you do. If you press square or your primary while in the air, she'll shoot bullets down at one single enemy. But if you hold down square, that's when she'll do the one that goes around. And usually the round one is pretty nice because it is automated. It's not like you have to keep clicking. So at some times for bigger enemies, it does feel like you're shooting a lot faster than just standardly just standing next to enemies and just firing away. So pretty nice on that front. But Robo's like whole thing was like with it is like it would change permanently, and I like that about Tidepool, that she doesn't change permanently. I can still use a single fire anytime I want to, but if there's a lot of enemies, I can use more of a spinning one that wouldn't necessarily target the one enemy I'm looking at, but overall just deal a bunch of damage to everything and hope to God that, you know, most things would die. I like that, and I wish that they would have done that with Robo, and this is a really nice example of why they didn't do it with Robo. So yeah, nice upgrade again. Wow, I like the positivity that is happening here. You know, a lot of positivity, pretty fun. Last up in our primary path, we have Blinding Ink and Whale Breach that are going to be standard upgrades to moves that I already have, and I both like these. The only one that I really have questions for is Blinding Ink. It slows down enemies while they're inked, so now they actually have that standard purplish inkish color to them for longer. And with it, they're slowed and also blinded, which in their meaning means that they're going to miss, potentially. Now, I can't really tell you the specifics to it, and this is where the question really comes in of, like, when that blinding works. Is it, like, when the enemy attacks and fully completes its animation and, like, hitbox and everything, that's when they have the potential to miss? Or is it, like, if they are... Like, if they get partially inked and then they revert back to normal, does the blinding still not work? I don't know. I just sat around and fucking shot enemies just to really try to figure it out, but I really couldn't. It's kind of hard. The ink goes away kind of quickly, so even at the end of things, I'll see them go back to normal and question if like they're dead. Did I not get hit? Is it? It's really weird. So fuck it. It really doesn't matter. Honestly, the thing that I cared about more was the slowness, because again, Tidepool isn't the quickest, so just giving a lot more space between her and the enemy with the whale is pretty cool. And speaking about the whale also got an upgrade that is a lot better at throwing off enemies. The whale does a nice little spin in the air, lands back down, and those bitches go flying. They go out of the stratosphere, out of this one. The whale in the previous could potentially just kind of like nudge them off a little bit. They do go like a little bit flying, but not super far. But this one just automatically just sends them. So yeah, I like the whale one, and I still like the blinding ink one. It's just a little bit questionable on how it works, at least from what I was looking for. So yeah, still nice upgrades. Primary path overall too, pretty nice. I liked how everything was kind of spaced out, and there wasn't a lot of upgrades to attacks themselves. A lot of it was just kind of adding on to things she already had, and I find that particularly pretty cool. So we're starting off really fantastically, but things can go down because we still have our secondary paths. So let's go jump right into both of them now. Going to the top, Aquamarine Raider. I'll ink to that, and Inking Big being our first ones, with this path dealing with in our pistols. And let me tell you, our ink gets kind of deadly. The first one, I'll ink to that, allows us to do poison damage or just overall overtime damage when an enemy gets hit. And it does roughly 9 damage, but who the fuck is going to hate extra damage, man? You're just shooting an enemy, and it's just doing that. Now, that's honestly something that I honestly thought would happen earlier on, but I kind of like how they just early on did more of like a slowness and then an added bonus of damage into the secondary path. I like that a lot, actually. I really do. So, starting off, great. The next one, let me tell you. Do you like shooting big loads? Because I promise you Tidepool does, because that's exactly what we could do. Just Mega Man style, we get to charge up our cool little guns, and we get to explode our load. And honestly, there's really not much to say. Just a big damage overall, 100 damage, you know? This is the most damage she can do in a move. And me saying that is honestly a contradiction, because the next move deals with our big loads and makes them even bigger. So let's head on to the next move so I can really show you how much damage our big loads can do, because I promise enemies are not going to like our big loads after this. And it's called Squid Pistol Kata, I think. Don't hate me for mispronunciation. But what this allows us to do is basically a combo move right after our big glob and shoot a bigger load onto any expecting enemies, and definitely getting a restraining order now. Like, there's no doubt about it. The amount of globs of ink that we spread onto these enemies is probably federal. It's like a federal crime. So, yeah, it's just a bunch of big globs getting shot, and it does a lot of damage. Who would have guessed? It starts off with 2, and then another 2. Then you do a cool little flip off your whale with a big glob at the end of multiple globs. So you're really building that one up. And it's a little hard to kind of measure up at the end. You do kind of go far. You can turn around and stuff. But as it goes on, it's a little harder to turn. And you're probably not going to hit the last one, if I had to be honest. I don't know how many times I was actually able to hit the big glob at the end for like multiple things. But doesn't really matter. It's still like 110 damage that you're dealing out there, and that's multiple times. So yeah, basically anything you're doing this to is probably dead unless it is a bigger enemy. So yeah, they're good. I like the top path, but let's see how the bottom path does, and let's see if they can kind of equal out in how fun they were, because this top path I really like. I just like the big damage overall that we're getting, just because Tidepool's other moves don't necessarily have that, and the passive damage from the ink just is awesome too. Onto the bottom path with Secret Forces, with Squid Squabble, and Threes a Pod. Now, these two, just like the top path, are very good. I like them. They deal a lot of things in it. So, let's go over Squid Squabble first. This, I don't know what it does, but it makes our squid friends a little bit more horned up, and they really want to start touching people. And to be fair, I don't know if any of these enemies speak squid, so I don't think the squid can legally get consent. So realistically, we're working with a criminal here. But other than that, it's good. You know, not good that we're working with a criminal, but it's good in damage-wise. There's a lot of tentacles on screen. There is a lot, and you can notice it pretty well. The last time I think I've seen this many tentacles in my life was from a certain anime that I am not going to specify here, and you'll never get out of my mouth. Another thing is Threes a Pod, and what this does is upgrade our whale. So, you know, we get 2 of 2, 1-1, and with this whale upgrade, we get to throw out 3 whales instead of 1, you know? That's why it says 3 in the name. And honestly, the whale itself already was pretty big. If you ever looked at your mother, you know, same comparison right there, but giving it 3 more really just makes the net really big at that point, and you can catch basically half the enemies if they're like in a pod and just send them away. But yeah, then this one, we still have one more move to go through, so let's go check that out. You know, I would guess it's going to be a squid one just because we haven't dealt with it that much, but, you know, I guess it could be a whale one. There's only one way to find out, so let's go on to the next move. And I was totally wrong. It's actually going to be another whale upgrade. Now, personally, I'm not going to really dock at points for this, but personally, I probably would have made it a squid upgrade just because the squid upgrade hasn't been a thing unless you pick the bottom path. The squid has been entirely itself the whole time, and even though I don't think it was neglected, I don't really see it that way just because, I don't know, I think the squid already did how much it was really supposed to do. I personally would have liked to see one more, but whatever, minor nitpick out of the way. The deep end allows us to make a sucking vortex right after the whale's done with its magnificent backflip, and it sucks in enemies. Now, there is a limit that I've seen, and if there isn't an enemy in it, they do kind of get spun around in it, but they still can attack you. It's not like a super vacuuming force. They can still get out if there's too many, and if they're not the initial enemy that gets kind of tossed around, they will just they'll spin in it, kind of. It's a little weird, but other than that, it's not bad. And I don't think any of these paths were bad. I think they all equaled up pretty well. I think they do lean in 2 different areas. Top one, I think, is a lot more of a riskier play, just because of the globs themselves. You know, you're pretty slow while doing it. You're not really hitting a lot of things. You know, you gotta charge up your move. So a lot more riskier for a lot more damage. While then the bottom path being a lot more safer for, obviously, again, the whales just overall just taking up like half the screen and half the enemies in one fell swoop and taking them away from all the way to half of the court, and then just giving the Kraken more of damaging wise, so you can run around, do more things. You can throw out 2 of the, like, yeah, it's just 2 different ways that you can play that perfectly, you know, you can pick either or, and I think you'll still have fun. I personally think the top one's more fun, just because I like the damage thing, but this one's a lot more opinionated, so it's really up to you. I really like them, and I'm glad that they made them pretty well balanced. let's get over this really quickly. Emergency Shell Met Defense is probably one of the worst Soil Gems I've ever seen. And it's not even out of utility. It is just by how fucking boring this thing is. The design of it is cool. We get to go in a big shell and just dash at enemies with our little squid feet, which is cool. I like the design of it. But the actual like utilization of it is so boring. You got one move, and that is dash. And dash. Guess what? Next move, dash. And the novelty of it wears off after the third dash. I promise. After you do the third one, you're like, okay, you'll never use this again. And I never did. So, yeah. Just don't pay any mention to this. If this would have been the squid upgrade that I was, like, you know, asking for in the bottom path, man, just keep it the Soul Gem, man. I'd rather this be something that everybody can get and just be like, unanimously be like, yep, this shit sucks, rather than the bottom path getting screwed over because of it, right? The bottom path was already a little bit on thin ice, but, like, this would have, like, broke it. But we'll get into all that after we go look at the Sky Chi real quick, just because, you know, they're pretty cool to look at. What are you waiting for is a fine Sky Chi. I think the thing that I like about it the most is that it directly references how she got the Sky Chi power anyways. She just rides on her whale, pause, not in a weird way, and she just starts firing. And just like the video, when you use her, she gets on top of the whale shields her up, and she shoots at the thing, and she gets her Sky Chi. So, yep, that's it, folks. That's all we got. So now, the last thing we need to do is go Raider. So, let me go take a look at everything and really figure out where I want to put Tidepool. Alright, so it's time to give my honest rating on Tidepool. And honestly, it wasn't hard at all. Tidepool is a 5 out of 5. There's very little that I can really rate Tidepool off of terms of badness. And those are 3 things. One thing, I really hate the Soul Gem. The Soul Gem would have taken it down if there was more negatives, but I'm not just gonna give Tidepool like a 4.5 or a 4 just because I don't align with the Soul Gem part of it, even though everything else has been phenomenal. So that, and then the other 2 are more personal reasons. I just kind of wish, one, that there was a little bit more of a squid upgrade, just to, I don't know, just to see some squid things happen. I think you could have done something with it, maybe Kraken style as the last one instead of like that Whirlpool one, and you know, maybe just make it so every time it hits it can apply ink or something like that. Would have been 2 cool different ones that would at least given the squid a little bit more of a push. But the last one is very much opinionated, and I just don't like her animations. I think she looks kind of stiff and just doesn't look fully complete in some senses, and looks kind of slow and like just everything. But that's more of a personal thing that I'm obviously not going to put in my rating. So yeah, it's a 5 out of 5. I personally think her moveset works really well together just to kind of mingle in, and I feel like I was using everything in different situations, and they all just perfectly worked and aligned together. I think the paths are obviously 2 very different things that for different people will like. And if you just like switching between your Skylander and having a lot more usage in her, or just overall, this is definitely one of the characters that you can switch between the 2 and just have fun in both different ways. So, yeah. It's pretty sad that Tidepool was one of those last Skylanders. Again, for me personally, I didn't even know she existed until I came back to Skylanders. So, yeah, it's pretty sad. I definitely think she's a fun one. And since I do see a lot of Imaginator comments out there for Skylanders I should do next, I definitely think you should pick up Tidepool. She is a definitely get, and a cool thing, even though she was one of the last ones, she's actually not that rare of a character to buy. So, you wouldn't be breaking the piggy bank with her. So, if you don't got her, you should definitely go get her. And other than that, that is honestly rated for you guys today. These come out every Saturday, and if again you want to see yours rated next, just leave it down in the comments, and eventually I will get to them. I'm going to plan to do every single Skylander, and the only thing that stops me is death. So, other than that, I think you guys are pretty locked in to getting your Skylander at some point. But thank you guys for watching. This was a fun one. I don't know. I was a little pepped up on my step on this one. Other than that, thank you. And I hope to see you in the next one. Go check out the playlist if you want to see any more. But, yeah. See you next Saturday, hopefully.